Today we're going to be talking about a few more skateboarding life hacks. Up first we have heating up your grip tape. So if you're someone who's prone to having air bubbles or having the sides of your grip peel up after setting up a new board, then supposedly this one should be helpful for you. Basically all it entails is after you put some fresh grip tape on a deck, you'll want to use something like a hairdryer to heat up the grip tape and go over it nice and evenly. And this should loosen up some of the adhesive underneath and allow the grip tape to sort of settle down and adhere to the board better. And if you don't have a hairdryer, the other option would be to take your board out on a nice sunny hot day and just let it sit out in the sun, grip tape side up, so that it gets nice and hot. I've never actually tried this one because I don't usually have trouble with my grip tape, but I've heard of people doing this one for a while. So if you're someone who does this and it works for you, let me know down in the comments. Up next we have breaking in your bushings. So if you buy a brand new pair of trucks, they tend to feel relatively loose right out of the box, especially if you're someone who's used to skating a little bit tighter of trucks. So the obvious thought would be to just tighten them up right away. But what I've usually heard is a general consensus that you should just skate the trucks the way that they are for at least a few days. And this allows the bushings to become broken in. Whereas if you were just to tighten them right away, you have a higher likelihood of the bearings getting smashed or cracking. This can also fix that thing where one of your trucks is a little crooked, so when you roll your board, it doesn't roll straight. This is something that I've personally done forever now, and I've never really had a problem with my bushings, so maybe you should try it out. Speaking of your trucks, up next we have putting grip tape under your trucks. So this one kind of sounds like a strange concept, but it's something I've come across here and there. And basically, if you have that problem where your trucks kind of wiggle around and your hardware never gets completely tight, this is supposed to take care of that. And so what you do is you cut out a little square of grip tape and you put it in between your board and the trucks. And apparently this should get rid of the problem of your trucks being a little loose and wobbly. Once again, this is something that I don't really ever have a problem with, but if that's something that happens to you and your trucks, then that definitely seems annoying and I would at least consider this one. Up next we have using a guitar rack for skateboard storage. So this one's kind of random, but hear me out. If you have multiple skateboards or a bunch of old decks lying around, then I'd argue that rather than keeping them in a big pile in the corner, getting your hands on one of these multi-guitar racks is a great way to organize. I've actually used this for years, and I never thought about the fact that it's actually pretty convenient until about right now. And the cool thing is you can get these in multiple sizes, like 3, 5, or 7, and they're relatively inexpensive, and you could probably even find one at a thrift store. So definitely keep your eye out for one if skateboard storage is an issue for you. For our next hack we have flipping your front bolts upside down. So this one's ridiculous and it's not actually useful, but it's something that you probably could have considered a skateboarding life hack back in the 80s, and I definitely wanted to try it out. So long story short, back in the day when skateboards were shaped more like this, and the nose was flat with no concave to catch your foot for something like an Ollie, something that people started to do was flip their front hardware upside down. And the thought process behind this was that now you'd have something for your foot to catch onto as it slid up the board, and then you could do something like an Ollie. So I decided to go test this out, and I must say it feels terrible. Now of course this doesn't fully work because I'm using a regular board which still has a nose, and I could feel that on most of my Ollie attempts my foot was kind of just sliding over the bolts and catching the nose, but I could definitely feel my shoe dragging along the hardware as it went up, and it just threw everything off and made it feel terrible. And while I'm sure that this was something that worked great back in the day when you needed it, it's not something that I'd recommend nowadays, but it was definitely something fun to at least mess around with. So if you're someone who hates having fun, then I wouldn't recommend this one. But if you do enjoy having fun, then maybe you should try messing around with this. Up next we have using your trucks as a bearing press. So this is a really obvious concept to pretty much all skateboarders, but in case there are some newer ones watching, I wanted to throw this in there. So when you're going to put your bearings into some wheels, instead of trying to shove them in with your fingers like a dope, or doing something else, all you have to do is either kind of just push the bearings into your wheel a little bit, or have the bearing already sitting on your truck over the axle, and then using some of your muscle and maybe some body weight, you can more easily push the bearing and wheel together until it pops in. And I'm pretty sure that this is probably the easiest way to do this. And also while we're at it, you can pretty much reverse the process using the axle of your truck. You push the wheel about halfway on, just so the axle is right past the bearing, and then you sort of twist and pull away, and then the bearing should pop right out. And just in case, as a side note, in case there are any real beginners watching, when you're tightening the nut on your axle to put your wheels on, leave a little bit of space rather than tightening it all the way. And this will make your bearings last longer and make your wheels actually roll. And finally, we're going to talk about rotating your wheels. And I don't mean having them spin on the ground while you ride, but rather the same way that you would rotate the tires on a car. So wheels have a tendency to wear down after a while, even if you're just riding around. And then other things like power slides and pivots or certain types of tricks will eventually lead to your wheels wearing down in different ways and in different spots. And so the theory here, just like a car, is that you'll want to rotate your wheels every once in a while, and this will keep them wearing down more evenly and thus prolonging their life. And from what I've heard, the best way to do this is to do it in an X pattern, where the right wheel of your front truck would now become the left wheel of your back truck, and so on. So these were just a few more random skateboarding life hacks, and while some of them were obviously more useful than others, I think that they're all kind of little fun experiments in their own way. And so I'd be curious to know if you use any of these, or if you have any other ones that I haven't mentioned. And there's also a part 1 to this video, which contains a few more of these, so definitely check that out if you haven't. Either way, just keep going out there and skateboarding and having fun. As always, I'd like to thank my perfectly pretty Patreon pledgers for being so awesome. And I'd like to thank you for watching, and you can like and subscribe if you want.